Thanks again for joining me today and for putting up with those technical issues at the beginning. We're here to talk today about the purpose paradox and its 6-letter solution. So what do I mean by that? So let's start by looking at what a paradox is. So the dictionary definition, a statement or proposition which, despite sound or apparently sound, and that's really important, reasoning, leads to a conclusion that seems logically unacceptable or self-contradictory. So the type of paradox I'm talking about today is usually going to be that thing that it sounds okay on the surface. When we do a bit more of a dive, it just doesn't make sense at all. And we're talking about in relation to using personal data, of course, because that's my bag. That's what we talk about, is data. This does apply to all sorts of data, though, and all sorts of projects. But today I'll be focusing on personal data. So when we are looking at, or our organisations are looking at data-related projects, what is the purpose of those projects? The words that will get thrown around, and I'm sure these will sound familiar to you, are things like we want to increase efficiency, we want some insight, we want to improve our customer service, which absolutely all sound brilliant. What about if we look at insight as an example, which disappeared again, and it's back again, insight as an example. We could be talking about where do people want to sit on the train? So we're looking at trains and where people want to sit, and we might collect all this information, get some really good insight. We might end up knowing, knowing that people mostly like to be forward facing, they want a table and they want some luggage space. So hopefully that starts to ring a few bells with the types of things that you're dealing with in your organisations. Are people getting carried away with the minutiae of what they're trying to do and not looking at the big picture? On the other hand as well, and we'll look at this in a bit more, obviously a bit more detail, are people looking at the big picture and going, yeah, that sounds great, we're going to do that, whilst not oh, I've got a few people can't access it. Oh dear. While not looking at the detail of how that will actually work, and getting carried away with, you know, this sounds great. Yeah, let's do that. And again, does that start to ring a few bells with you? Another example, customer service. You might be shown this picture. Are you happy with this? This is your hair. Are you happy with this? Oh, well, I have to say, as far as I can tell, it looks healthy, looks nice and thick, it looks smooth. If my hairdresser showed me that and said, are you happy with your hair? I might go, I think so. Looking too close at the minutiae, because it's the hair on my back and I don't want my back to look like that. So that would be a big no for me. In social housing in particular, now, no, you're not all in social housing, but that's sort of my main area of focus. But in social housing in particular, we have an issue that people are talking about using data and making data work for us and all these sorts of things, and not really thinking through what does that mean in purpose. In practice, sorry. See, purpose is just, I can't stop saying in purpose. And you get things like a nod to data protection. And we get, you know, it is protected under GDPR, but as long as you can come up with a reason as to why you need this information, which is providing tenants with a better quality, then you're going to be fine. And we know, as people interested in data protection, it's not that simple. However, this also is a really good example of how people react to GDPR and data protection in general. And they're like, oh, yeah, we know it's a bit of a pain, but don't worry about it. So what I want to talk about today is a way to reduce the risks that come with some of these projects in terms of data protection risks and data related privacy risks and so on, without having to even talk about data protection, without having to get as far as mentioning the dreaded words data protection or GDPR. And we're going to do data protection by stealth in a way. Because when we talk about our values as organisations, so many of you here today will recognise these as values that your company, your organisations will say, yes, we aspire to that, we hold that important. We want to be transparent, we want to uphold people's rights, we don't want to discriminate, we want people to be safe, we want to manage our budgets, provide good quality, so on and so on and so on. Well, all of these things are data protection related. But data protection has a really bad rep. As we know, data protection holds all these things as values, but people don't get that. People don't understand that that's what data protection is. They think it's this red tape that gets in the way. So we're going to introduce it without even saying the words data protection. So here's an example. I jumped. No, here's an example of when people just don't get the data protection issue. And actually, you could stop it way before it becomes a data protection issue. So this is one that I saw recently on Twitter. A few of you will have seen this, and I've probably shared it on LinkedIn as well, I think. Walgreens in the US, so obviously different privacy rules or less privacy rules, but they sent out free gifts to this person who'd obviously used their Walgreens card, like their Boots card, to buy a pregnancy test. And she received baby formula in the post just after she bought a pregnancy kit, pregnancy test. So the idea was, oh, here's a nice free gift. But does that align with the appropriate purpose? Is that going to make the customer happy? Is it going to actually trigger them? Maybe they wanted to be pregnant and they're not. Maybe they didn't want to be pregnant and they are. Is it the right timing anyway? Even if they were pregnant, who wants baby formula as soon as they're pregnant? You've got to put it somewhere for a good few months, or the pregnancy doesn't continue. And I'm not even going to get started on, because I can rant all day about the problems with pushing formula over breastfeeding and the fact that they're doing that before mum's even had a chance to think about breastfeeding. I won't rant about that just now. That's not the point today. But the unintended consequences here with what they thought they were doing, just a free gift. It's a nice free gift. It's going to get you on board buying our formula. Just not thinking about the unintended consequences that could come there. And that misalignment with the appropriate purpose. So we look at another couple of examples. This will be very familiar to you. You have a project plan in your business and they bring a team together, look at some options, make a plan, software test it, pilot, go live. And quite often they do a DPIA right at the end, just before go live. I'm not going to talk about that today because that's too late. We want to think about much, much earlier. Does the project plan go in the same direction as the organisation's original purpose? That's the question we want to be asking before we even think about data protection, privacy, anything like that. Does the purpose of this project align with our purpose as an organisation? So here's an example, and I've actually heard about this in 2 housing associations recently. Wanting to go green, wanting to consider electric vans, and in these organisations, the operatives take their vans home. So as part of that project, one of the tasks was we're going to use Google to look at the home addresses of all our colleagues to see if they can plug in an electric van at their home. And that came to me as a question of, do we need to tell people we're doing this? And yes, you would, but let's look at it in the round. Let's not look at that detail. Let's zoom out a little bit. How's that going to make colleagues feel that you're spying on their home addresses? Because they didn't want to tell people. That was it. They said, we don't want to tell people because we know they're not going to like it. So how does that align with Great Place to Work being one of their ambitions, one of their purposes? Well, it doesn't. It sits very uncomfortably. Another one was, and again, this is something I rant about a lot if you follow me on LinkedIn. I have a post brewing at the moment about this. We're always trying to collect ethnicity, religion, sexuality, disability, health information from our customers so that we can have that insight and provide equality and diversity and all those kind of things, which are absolutely great things to aim for, of course. But in this particular instance, in this particular community, where the head of Insight was going out and actually speaking to people that he was asking these questions of, because he had been like, no, this is absolutely just a really good idea. When I challenged him, he was like, well, I'll be on site and I'll be speaking to them, so I'll see how it goes. He was absolutely expecting it to be, a positive thing. He discovered he was speaking to customers who'd come from war-torn countries about their ethnicity and religion, where those wars were based on ethnicity and religion. So we had this head of customer insight who was speaking to customers from war-torn countries about their ethnicity and religion, and they were so uncomfortable, and he just hadn't considered that as a possibility. So that really did not align with the organisation's objective to respect our customers. Somewhere else that we see the purpose paradox. So hopefully these things are starting to ring a bell and kind of raise a few flags with the sort of things that you come up against in your organisation or that you're aware of. Another place that I've seen it, which isn't really a project, but it's still really important. And again, it wasn't about data. So this shows the importance, or personal data, but this shows the importance of applying this across the board. No pun intended, because this is about board terms of reference and the subcommittees of the board. So organisation, when you looked at their terms of reference for each of their board and their subcommittees, they looked like they made absolute sense. When you took the barriers away and you looked at them all together across the board, across the page, you could see this overlap. So actually it was going to cause loads of confusion, and that needed to be stripped out and reorganised to make the purpose of each meeting absolutely clear and stop any conflicts. So the 6-letter solution. Those of you who've been to any of my training or anything that I've done before will probably not be surprised to hear that the 6 letters are these 2 words, why and how. They are questions that I will hound my clients with. Why are you doing that? How is it going to work? How is it going to affect people? All these sorts of questions. So the route to finding out if you've got a purpose paradox and then to solving it are these 2 words used in different ways, why and how. So we'll look at those different ways that we use them. Whenever we're deciding if we should be doing something, any project, any task, any new way of working, new policy, anything like that, we should be looking at the benefits to our purpose as a whole, not just an individual or a team or something like that. That as well is important, but obviously the whole purpose and the risks and costs, and lining them up, plotting them against each other. And then you can see this is very, very rough, but if something's got really high benefits and low risks and you want to do it, high benefit but high risks, do it with controls. If there's not much benefit, but there's not much risk. You probably could do it if you've got the resources. And if it lands in number 4, no benefit or low benefit, high risks and high costs, then absolutely don't do it. I think this gets missed a lot in a lot of business cases that I've seen. We look at the benefit in a very narrow way. And then the risks as well aren't necessarily wide enough. So I'll explain what I mean in a minute. So the why is the purpose, and the risks and costs are how is this going to affect us? How much is it going to cost, and how much is it going to risk hurting people? And the purpose especially, we need to look at through 3 lenses. Anyone who was on the data protection impact assessment training will have seen these 3 lenses before. We look at things through the satellite view, so completely zoomed out, a street view, so kind of on the level, person to person, face to face, and then we look zoomed in, looking at the details of the processes and procedures, the mechanisms behind what's going on. Again, I'll show that in more detail. So this is how we apply that solution. There are these 3 questions with an extra bonus question that align with that why, how, and why. So I'll work through some examples in a minute, but we'll be looking at the purpose of the project and the organizer and of the organisation, and do they align? Will what we're doing, and this is the question that so often gets missed, this is so important, will what we're doing actually achieve that purpose? With the cheeky bonus question being, will it really? And really forcing people to look at that. Then if we get a yes to that, we've got a good purpose, what we're doing will achieve that purpose, and it really, really will. Then we look at, well, what are the risks and costs? How much will it cost us? How much of a risk is it? Why is it worth still doing with that in mind? So let's put the solution to the test. Part 1, we're looking at the purpose of the project and the organisation. We're asking that why. Why are we doing this? Why is it important? Going to be like a toddler or my 6-year-old, 3-year-old and 6-year-old I've got, and they're good at asking this. Why? I'm sure anyone who has ever been around any child will recognise this. We're going to ask why, but we're not going to ask it once. We're going to ask it over and over and over again, until people are annoyed by us, probably. And I always say you don't go into data protection to be popular, but we're going to ask why over and over and over again. When we've got the crux of why we're doing this, and that might take lots and lots of whys, this is the key question that gets missed, as I say. Will it achieve that purpose? And will it really? You'll see some examples in a minute. How will it achieve that purpose? Where's connect the dots for me. Show me how A will get to Z. Show me absolutely every step that you'll be taking. You know, I'm still waving my hands around here, even though you can't see me. I just can't help myself. And again, we will want to ask how more than once as well. We want to see every step in that connection. So there's a root analysis tool called the 5 whys, and I would say you want to use at least 5 whys and at least 5 hows to keep drilling down level by level to the next bit of information. Then we're at part 3. If we've got through the first 2 gates and we've got yeses, the final gate is, if it will achieve that purpose, is it worth the risks and costs? So I'm not going to go through in detail here because I've obviously spent a bit of time messing about, beginning with the technology, but you'll get all the slides and you'll get the recording. But you will apply the how and the why. So how much will it cost in terms of money and, you know, resources and all that kind of thing, which isn't usually where we get involved in data protection. So that's, you know, you'll be flagging it, but somebody else can work that out. And then the two other bits about how it could affect people and how it could go wrong, that's your bag, that's your main bit if you're in data protection. But again, you don't need to be doing this to people. You need to be flagging this to your colleagues and getting them to think about that. So as I say, I won't go into detail here, but these are the prompts that I use, and I've written articles about this before as well, and I'll keep sharing this kind of thing as well. But these are the prompts that I would use to try and identify risks to different people, to challenge your thinking. Am I using stereotypes? Have I considered people who have got different characteristics, or am I looking at it through my eyes? And the same goes for different experiences. Have I thought about it as me, somebody who doesn't have a problem sharing my religion, or am I thinking about people who have lived through wars where religion was really key in that, for example? Next part is the identifying risks in the processes, and then that's the technical security measures. Then we might start to look at legal basis, and we might start to think about who could actually who could touch that data, remembering that trust is not a control, where could mistakes be made, all those sorts of things. But I don't want to be having to do all this if I can stop the process or the project or get it thought about a bit more earlier on in the procedure. If we have got this far, we've got our list of risks, we've got our list of costs, we know what the benefit will be, then we've got to weigh up, well, okay, with all that in mind, why is it acceptable to go ahead? And that's your real business case part. As long as you're getting all that information, that's a solid, to me, a good business case. So just to recap that part of it, and then we'll look at some examples. Solving the purpose paradox, finding out if you've got one, and then solving it. We're going to ask why are we doing it? How will it actually achieve what you think it will? How much will it cost us in terms of risk and money? And why is it worth doing in that case? You want to try and build this into your tools, build this tool into your other existing tools. So think about, in your organisation, where have you got existing templates, things like business case templates, things like project plan kickoffs or project plan proposals. What procedures have you got that ideas have to go through? What meetings have you got that ideas get thought about and kicked around in? I've not included DPIAs because this is before DPIAs. We're not thinking about the data protection aspect necessarily. We're thinking about everything else that comes before it, and then we might need to think about data protection, ideally. When the data protection officer hears someone say, I've had a great idea, that's where you want to be implementing this, this test. You need to be like that owl who's beady-eyed, keeping an eye on everything and listening out, which I think is harder now we're not in offices, but make sure you've got your ear to the ground and you're hearing, I've had a great idea. Oh yeah, have you? Let's apply the purpose paradox test. Is our purpose aligned with what we want to do? Or is what we're doing aligned with what we want, with our purpose? So here's an example. So this was the electric vans using Google to look at colleagues' homes. I said we'd look at this in a bit more detail. So why are we doing this project? What are we trying to achieve? Thinking about whether this aligns with our purpose. How will it achieve that outcome? Cheeky question, will it really? And again, is that aligning with our purpose? Then we think about, is it worth risks and costs? So my answers here for the electric van. Why are we doing it? Because we want to convert to electric vans. Does that align with our purpose? Well, yes, we want to go green. I've missed an answer right there, but yeah, we want to go green. Yeah, that's great. How will it achieve this outcome? Okay, so we're going to check if colleagues can charge an electric van. Will it really tell us that? Are there accuracy issues with Google Earth or Google Street View? I think it was, whatever it was, they wanted to use the Google Maps. There absolutely are accuracy issues. So is it actually going to do what we wanted it to do? No. If you are getting pushback, you might take one further step. Is it worth the risks and costs? So before we even talk about privacy, How much time is it going to take? Because these are things that people who aren't in the data protection world will grasp onto better. And it is more, you're speaking their language more. Is it going to give you what you think it will? Well, actually, probably not, because it won't be accurate and you'll need to go back and redo it or check it with the colleagues anyway. And is it going to take forever? Yeah, it's going to take forever. Is there another way you could do it that would be accurate and wouldn't take forever? Oh, we could ask them. We could ask the colleagues if they can charge a van, perhaps. I've stolen an idea here that was shared by Eleanor from Best Companies. Thank you. I think you're here today. I'm not sure. And she was telling me about that. This is what I was thinking of, but she explained it in words. She'd heard about this from Clay Christensen. He talks about what job does the milkshake do, which obviously I've changed to project. So do look that up. It's on YouTube and all sorts of places. He talks about when they were trying to help McDonald's sell more milkshakes. They wanted to know why people were buying milkshakes. What job was it doing for that person? And that helped them understand how they could better target the marketing. So yeah, Clay Christensen, what job does the milkshake do? Look that up on YouTube. Really, really thought-provoking. It was so that they could market more milkshakes, but it works with why are we doing this project and is there a point to it as well? So how do we mix that with mix, no pun intended, with milkshakes, but how do we mix that with the three lenses? Let's look at when we need to look at purpose in more detail, because at a high level it sounds great. Sometimes we will need to go a little bit more in depth to ask those why, how. Applying these three lenses really helps, and it sounds a bit less annoying than just going why. So if we start with the satellite view, here's an example. Example 1, using an app to monitor well-being. Okay, this is an example that I've stolen from a client as well. So that sounds great. The purpose of that is safeguarding. From a satellite view, zoomed out, that sounds great. Is it necessary for us to do that? Yes, it absolutely is. That's brilliant. Come down a level. How is it going to be done? Well, it's going to be done by continually monitoring well-being of the participants through this app. Oh, well, that sounds great. We want to monitor their well-being continually, makes it easier to find trends. Fantastic. How, once more, what is the actual mechanism? We're going to ask the same 25 personal and sensitive questions to every person every week that's using this app. Now I can see how that doesn't align with safeguarding or monitoring well-being. You put yourself in the shoes of that person who's been asked those questions every week. Does that feel like it aligns with well-being? I've already gone ahead and put a cross, and I'm going to go ahead and stamp this as purpose paradox. Interested if anyone disagrees with that, by the way. We can talk about that in the Q&As later if you do. Try and get comfortable. Holding up the phone, sorry about that. So that, hopefully that makes sense. Here's another one. Supporting tenants into employment, example 2. So satellite view, public interest, absolutely sounds great. Yep, we need to do that, help our tenants. How are we going to do that? We're going to do it at a person-to-person level. What we're going to do is we're going to raise awareness of employment, our employment support service. Brilliant, we need to do that. How are we actually going to do it? What's the mechanism? Zoom right into the nuts and bolts. We're going to email all the customer contact email addresses that we've got, not our marketing list, our customer contacts for dealing with day-to-day issues. with wording that says something along the lines of, and I'm being a little bit mean here because it was, oh no, I'm not really, it was quite this blunt. The plan, it didn't go ahead once I'd heard about it, but the plan was saying, you as a tenant probably need employment help. So here's our employment service. And again, I've gone ahead and put a cross there. And I've said, if you compare using these email addresses to say that sort of message, are you actually supporting tenants? How are they going to feel? They're going to feel supported or attacked. Again, I've gone ahead and marked that as purpose paradox. Again, really interested to hear if anybody would disagree with that. But you'll see in each of these, we're not getting into article numbers, GDPR quotations, even the words data protection or privacy or confidentiality or PECA, as we would have to think about here, because those things just turn people off. When you talk about looking at it from the point of view of the employee, of the colleague or the employee, customer, tenant, that's the word. How are they likely going to feel, and does it align with what you were trying to do? Does the purpose of the project align with the purpose of the organisation in every way, from the big picture through to the person-to-person picture, through to the nitty-gritty of the nuts and bolts? Will it achieve that purpose? Have you missed something? Are you looking at either end of the problem too closely? Are you only looking at it in detail and saying, oh, great, we'll find out about the strength of the hair, brilliant, and not looking at the zoomed out version where we can see that's hair on the back and nobody wants the hair on. I don't want that hair on my back. I don't really like that, by the way. Or just thought I better add that. Or are we looking too global, too zoomed out and saying, oh, yeah, it's safeguarding, so absolutely we're going to do it. Look at all those different levels. Will it achieve that purpose? Will it really? How? At least 5 times. And then if we've still got a yes, then we look at, is it worth the risk and the cost? Recap of aligning data with purpose. We're looking at our data handling projects. Is it going to benefit our purpose, and will it hopefully have low risks and costs? And can we keep in that number 1 circle, square, as much as we can? I do have, of course, I say this is free, and I do have to advertise my paid for products as well, which I assure you usually go much more smoothly than this. Purpose and Data Alignment Programme, which is a full-on programme of embedding this sort of thinking into everything that you do, and supporting you to do that, and you know, all the tools and all the training and all the templates that you would need to do that. It's, you know, a several months project, but you can pick and choose, you know, if you want to talk to me about doing part of it or starting small and building up to it. It is specially designed at the moment for social housing providers, but it's completely adaptable. So again, if you want to talk to me about adapting it, just give me a shout.